Hey, welcome. Today we are diving into one of the most maddening experiences you can have, that vicious cycle of sleep anxiety. You know the feeling. The one thing your body is desperate for, sleep, is the very thing your mind just will not allow.
Does this little voice sound familiar? That frantic internal monologue? You start watching the clock, right? The pressure builds, your heart starts pounding a little faster. You know you're supposed to relax, but yelling at yourself to just sleep only makes you feel more wide awake. It is a tough spot, and so many of us have been there.
And look, there's a really good reason it feels like a trap, because it is. But here's the good news. You're not just bad at sleeping. This is not some personal failure. It's a well-understood psychological loop. So let's unpack what's really going on inside your head when this cycle kicks in.
First things first, if this is you, please know you are not alone in this. Not even close. A whopping 40% of adults deal with this exact kind of sleep anxiety. It's a huge driver of insomnia, which means that feeling of being all alone in the dark with your racing thoughts, well, millions of other people are feeling that right along with you.
Now here's a really key distinction to make. Sleep anxiety isn't exactly the same thing as insomnia itself. It's the worrying about sleep, that dread that creeps in as bedtime gets closer. That, paradoxically, keeps you awake. It becomes the cause of the problem, not just a symptom.
Okay, so let's get into the mechanics of this, because once you understand why it's happening, you can start to break free. Why is it that the most common sense approach, just trying harder to fall asleep, why does that always backfire so badly?
Well, it usually unfolds in this three-step chain reaction. First, you've got the trigger. A thought just pops into your head. Something like, oh no, what if I can't fall asleep tonight? That single thought immediately kicks off step 2. Your body's alarm system, the fight or flight response, gets activated. And when this happens night after night, you get to the really tricky part. Step 3, conditioning. Your brain actually learns an association, and your bed itself becomes a trigger for anxiety. And this chart just illustrates the problem perfectly. On one side, you have your sleep system, that's your rest and digest mode, and on the other, your anxiety system, your fight or flight mode. Here's the thing, you physically cannot be in both of these states at the same time. They are neurological opposites. So trying to force sleep when you're anxious is literally like flooring the gas and the brake at the exact same time. It just doesn't work.
And this brings us to the central paradox of it all. Sleep is not something you do. It's something you have to allow to happen. The moment you start making a conscious effort to control it, you're firing up all the thinking and planning parts of your brain, which, of course, is the very definition of being awake.
But here is the really fantastic news. Because scientists and doctors understand this whole mechanism so well, there is an incredibly effective, evidence-based way to fix it. So let's talk about the gold standard solution for breaking this cycle for good.
It's called Cognitive Behavioral Therapy for Insomnia, or CBTI for short. And please don't let that long name scare you off. This isn't about years of therapy. Think of it more like a practical, hands-on toolkit that's designed to retrain your brain's automatic response to your bed and to the whole idea of sleep. And you might be wondering, does it actually work? Well, just look at these numbers. They are truly staggering. We're talking about 70 to 80% of people who go through a CBTI program seeing their insomnia go into remission. Basically, it's resolved. For any kind of behavioral treatment, those results are absolutely incredible.
This chart really shows why it's considered the gold standard. Unlike sleeping pills, which can kind of act like a temporary band-aid, the skills you learn with CBTI actually last. And that's because you're not just masking the symptoms, you're fundamentally fixing the faulty wiring that connects your brain to your bed.
So, what's actually in this toolkit? Let's walk through a couple of the most powerful and honestly pretty counterintuitive techniques that you can start putting into practice.
Let's start with a kind of provocative question. We're always told, just stay in bed, tough it out, sleep will come. But what if the absolute best thing you could do when you can't sleep is to actually get up and walk away?
This is a core CBTI technique called stimulus control. The rule is simple, even if it's a little tough to do at first. If you've been lying there awake for what feels like 20 minutes or so, you get out of bed. The whole point is to break that negative association we talked about. You are systematically reteaching your brain that the bed is for one thing and one thing only: sleep. Not for worrying, not for tossing and turning. All right, so if you thought getting out of bed sounded a little strange, brace yourself for this next one. What if you went to bed with the goal of not sleeping at all?
It's a technique called paradoxical intention. It sounds wild, I know, but by lying in bed and just gently trying to stay awake,
you completely remove the pressure to perform. Suddenly, the goal isn't to succeed at sleeping, it's to fail at staying awake. You take away all that performance anxiety, and in doing that, you get out of your own way and let your body's natural sleep drive take over.
Okay, so how do we pull all of this together into a real plan you can actually use? Let's get super practical and build a little action plan for taking back your nights, starting right now.
Here is a simple if-then plan. It's all about matching the right tool to the specific feeling. So, if you feel those anxious thoughts revving up before you even get into bed, try scheduling a 10-minute worry time earlier in the evening to get it all out. If you find yourself frustrated and wide awake in bed, that's your cue to use the 20-minute rule. And if the anxiety feels more physical, like tension in your body, you can use a simple breathing technique like 4-7-8 breathing to directly calm your nervous system.
And you know, maybe the most powerful tool of all is just a simple mental shift, a cognitive reframe. Try telling yourself this exact sentence tonight. By shifting your goal from the high-pressure performance of sleep to the gentle, achievable state of rest, you take all the pressure off. If sleep comes, that's great. But if it doesn't, you're still succeeding at your goal, which is just to rest your body.
So in the end, it really all boils down to this choice. That cycle of sleep anxiety is a fight that you simply cannot win with brute force. The only real way to win is to stop fighting. It's about using these tools to create the right conditions and then stepping back and allowing sleep to come to you. The power isn't in trying harder, it's in letting go.